something higher than just money.
I remember about 10, 11, or 12 years ago, I covered a very interesting story in this town. PNC Bank used to be National City Bank. And I remember it was a big case, and I wrote this story about how they were denying blacks, denying black preachers in this town loans. Black pastors were denied loans in this town by PNC. It was National City back then. And I got into that story and wrote this story. And I got into the story because there were black loan officers who basically decided to be whistleblowers. And if you type PNC or National City lawsuit, you see all kinds of, it's just, anyway. But to stick to this was about 12, 13 years ago. Black loan officers at the bank decided to speak up, to be whistleblowers, and basically gave away the goods and talked about how black pastors were being denied loans by National City Bank. And I did this story, and it was incredible. So that is also part of this narrative about financial institutions that really engaged in sanctioned discrimination. And when they get caught, they end up paying, they pay a fine here and there, and they move on with their life. And sometimes, you may get $1 billion or $2 billion out of them, or sometimes they'll just drag you in court because they have enough money to fight you in court, and you may end up going bankrupt by the time you actually get a verdict in court, because they will just keep you in court. And those high-powered lawyers have been paid in court and so forth, and they just keep the case going to basically string you along. And that's what goes on. And so for the average man, for the little man, they don't have a recourse when they go through this kinds of sanctioned discriminations by some of our financial institutions.
We have First Independence Bank, and let's talk about that. Let's just take racism arguendo as a prevailing, pre-existing condition. Let's just take that and granted. So we've had a bank, black bank here, Don Davis, rest his soul.
Right.
We've had some pioneering people attempting to grow this bank out. But let's look at that bank as a subset of the total economic power of the black community. We just had another report. African Americans inside Detroit, residents of Detroit, are spending something like $3.2 billion each year in the suburbs. Each year. We're talking about the black economy, something like $1.2 trillion or something like that. I sent that to you.
Right.
So let's just argue that if we put our deposits into our own bank,
right,
would that not maybe possibly give us an institutional response to that problem?
But that is true. But it still does not. It still does not applicate financial institutions, because there's something called the CRA, Community Reinvestment Act,
right? Exactly.
And they're supposed to do something. They're supposed to address those kinds of issues. So they're still operating here. Chase Bank gave the city of Detroit $150 million, right? $150 million. The mayor, Mike Duggan, walks around here praising Chase Bank like they're the best thing since sliced bread. No, I've seen it. He talks about Jamie Dimon all the time and with glow and glee. But let's look at the record of Chase Bank going back to 2017, the crash on Wall Street. When Chase Bank came here and made the donation, I wrote a column saying, look, let's not get into, a state of, sugar candy. Let's not act as if this is the best thing that happened to Detroit's revival. Chase Bank was part of the mortgage meltdown. Attorney General Eric Holder went after Chase Bank. They settled for more than $14 billion. The record is clear with Chase Bank. So we can act here if Chase Bank comes here and give us $150 million.